Hey ghouls, Terror Krueger, the sweetest psychopath you'll ever meet, and welcome back to my channel. Hey ghouls, welcome back. It's me, Terror Krueger, bringing you another true crime and chill video. If you happen to have noticed, I am so sorry for my absence. It's just been, a weird emotional roller coaster these past few weeks. Like, a lot of crazy shit has happened. And I've just kind of been in this weird headspace where, like, I want to do videos and film, but I just don't have the energy or the drive. And I felt like if I were to record something, you could totally just get the vibe or right away that I just wasn't, I don't know, into it. Like, I wasn't mentally here for it. But now I'm feeling a lot better, for the most part. But I have a feeling it's just kind of like the time change, the seasonal change, and all that bullshit. I find that it gets darker like a lot sooner, so like it gives me like crazy anxiety and like I slightly get depressed. I don't know, it's weird. Mental illness is a real thing, and unfortunately, like, it's just kind of something I go through every year. No matter what's going on in my life, like, I could be having the best time ever, like, in my life, as I truly am right now. Like, there's really nothing for me to be, like, upset about, but I don't know. I'm just on, like, recently been in this downward spiral, and I don't know why. I just got to get over it. Just got to really talk myself into, like, getting out of this funk, because there's really nothing going on in my life that I should be upset about at all. Like, I keep thinking, I'm like, well, maybe this or that, and no. Other than that, but anyways, let's get all that out of the way. So today's case, we are going to follow Westley Allan Dodd, who was actually quite a disturbing, horrible person, and it's a really interesting case. I really try to deep like what am I trying to say? Oh my god, I'm like so flushed and all over the place. I really try to find like interesting cases for like criminals or serial killers that aren't that well known. So like there's not like a million and one videos like here, which is why I haven't done like Richard Ramirez, Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, because I mean you could find shit about them like anywhere, and maybe one day I'll eventually cover them and give you just like I don't know, my version of the story. I mean, it's the same story I'm going to tell you just from my mouth. I don't know. But for now, I decided I want to find like really unknown serial killers, or serial killers that may not like have that much known about them, because I don't know for what reason. This one is kind of a crazy case, and reading about it, I was like, holy shit. Wow. So anyways, like I said, today we're going to get into the case of Westley Allan Dodd, who was born July 3rd of 1961. He was the oldest of 3 children to Jim and Carol Dodd, and was born in Richland, Washington. He does claim, however, as a child that he was never like abused or neglected as a child, and that he just never heard the word, but he also never had affection, so he claims that he never ever heard the words like "I love you" growing up. Although while incarcerated, he did find his diary was found, where he documented that his father was emotionally and physically abusive, and that he was neglected for his younger siblings. And it's hard to tell like what part of it's true. I would say the diary maybe more, because as we get further into the story, you kind of get the fact, you can kind of tell that he's not at all a liar, because in interviews and stuff I'll go ahead and show you here in this video, he's very open about what he did and what he wants to do. So I don't really see why he would lie about certain things if he was so open and honest about worse things. He did witness a lot of violence between his parents, and at school he didn't have that great of a time at school either. He wasn't really welcome into social groups or had many friends, and by the age of 9 it is said that he discovered that he was a homosexual and attracted to other boys, and he was actually ridiculed and picked on a lot for it at school. There was incidences where the other boys would pretend to be interested in him and like make a move, like flirt with him, and then in the shower rooms kind of like, oh, it's okay to touch me, like to touch each other, whatever. And the minute like he kind of showed that he was down to do it or whatever, they would call him out, and the whole group of boys would just like ridicule him and beat him up. So he didn't have that great of a time in school either. And on his 15th birthday in 1976, his father actually attempted suicide. I'm not sure if it was in front of him in the family, or if like he just was aware of what was going on after his parents had gotten in an argument. Now, I didn't read or see if it specified how the father tried to kill himself or what went down, but that was another like traumatic issue going on. So at a very early age, he started like really experimenting with like weird sexual things. At one point, I forgot who I was reading. I've been reading a lot of fucking like different articles about him. But someone in his family had had a catheter, and he would kind of watch as the catheter on this person was changed out, and it kind of got him in this weird like habit. Well, not going to yuck someone's yum. Well, not just yet. Anyways, he was kind of into, well, at a time, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a name for it, but he would partake in what is called sounding. And if you don't know what sounding is, it is where you just take your penis and like stick stuff down your urethra, usually just like a small little anything that would fit in there, kind of like stimulated, because I don't know, to me that just sounds painful and uncomfortable. But I actually I actually had a close friend who was really into sounding, and he would show me pictures and videos of him doing stuff, and he would just say it really made him happy. Let's just say that, to the point of, and yes, he showed me many videos, and I was kind of like, intriguing. What I didn't know, that just, to me, it looks painful. But I remember one time he had a Nintendo DS stick in there, and I was like, bitch, that, oh, I don't know. But then he also had these weird little toys that were for it. One was a thin little, like, rod that had a little vibrating ball at the end, and he would, like, just go to town with it, like, and then you would just see him, like, anyway, totally off topic. And anyways, just kind of giving you an idea of what that is, because I was reading this to someone when I was like doing my research for it, and like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, he was sounding, you never heard of that? And apparently a lot of people haven't, but I had a lot of weird friends growing up, and still do, so that one wasn't news to me. Anyways, off topic, let's get into it. So Westley Allan Dodd was into sounding and was experimenting with it a lot, just sticking things randomly that he could in there. By the age of 13, though, he did start exposing himself to neighborhood children, which later his father said he was actually aware of, but didn't really think that it was a big deal, because for the most part he was a good kid and never didn't get involved in like trouble or like drugs and smoking or anything like that. Like, okay, like, I think I would rather catch my child smoking a cigarette than like exposing himself to children. That's a little disturbing to think. Like, his father was like, oh, it's just nothing, at least he's not smoking. But because he had such a large family, he would often like volunteer to babysit, and that is when he kind of started molesting other members of his family, which were usually just younger boys. Sorry if I'm looking off to the side, I'm like reading my notes. And then he would also abuse children of women his father was dating, because they had split up, and I guess the dad started dating around. And this is all by the time he was from 13 to 15. At the age of 15, he was arrested for indecent exposure and was sent to a juvenile counseling. Yeah, you're gonna, like, through the whole story, you're gonna be like, why wasn't he arrested? Like, he gets counseling, he gets like warnings, like he had the complexion protection that he got a lot of passes on shit. So in 1981, at the age of 20, Westley Allan Dodd actually tried to pick up 2 underage girls, but they actually reported him to the police, and again, nothing was done. Shortly after, he joined the U.S. Navy, and that is where he started abusing other children that lived on the base where he was stationed. So at a time, Dobbs actually offered a group of boys $50 to go back to his place to play a game of strip poker with them. Luckily, the children declined the offer and actually contacted the police. When the police did go to investigate, he did admit that if the boys went, he admitted this, that if the boys were to have gone back with him, he did have plans on molesting them. And again, no charges were ever filed. They were just all like, oh, you get out of here. Like, shortly after that, he was arrested for exposing himself to a 10-year-old boy, which he then again only received 19 days in jail and was kicked out of the Navy. And he only spent 19 days in jail and was forced to undergo counseling. In May of 1984, he was arrested again for molesting a 10-year-old boy, and once again was only had a suspended sentence and never had full charges or like fully got any like punishment for it. So I feel this is why he continued to do what he was doing, because like literally these people did nothing to like stop a monster from committing the acts he eventually did. So Dawes literally planned his whole life on just like getting targets, like easy jobs to have access to children. He had moved into an apartment complex that was like majority families and children living in the area. He worked at fast food restaurants. He also became like a charity truck driver. He was actually just molesting like preschool age children, and at the time he was caught, the mother of the two children that he molested said that they didn't want to press charges against him because they felt it would have been too traumatic on the children if they were forced to go to trial. I mean, yeah, I can understand that, but also you're gonna let this monster get away with doing what he did, and then possibly, well, in his case, doing what he does to other children. Like, he could have been stopped right here and there, but no, they continued to just let him get a pass. And in 1987, Dobbs did try to lure a young boy into a vacant building. Luckily, again, the boy refused to go and reported him to the police. Aware of his sexual criminal behavior, they had suggested 5 years, as a punishment. Again, he got the minimal sentence because he hadn't actually molested or touched or exposed himself to the child. So he was in charge of probation and asked to seek like therapeutic help, if I used that word correctly, sorry. And again went unpunished for yet again attempting to assault a young child. After that, he moved to Vancouver, Washington, where he got a job as a clerk at a store. Part just totally blows my mind. So like in 1989, Dobbs decided that he would kind of hide out in David Douglas Park, which was this heavily wooded park in the area he was living in, where he would kind of just hide around and find victims. He was arrested several times over the years, with a short jail sentence and just recommended therapy for all the children he was molesting. And at this, suspected that it was 50 children that Dobbs had sexually molested, all of them being under the age of 12, some of them as early as the age of 2. And then at one point they did, so at one point Dobbs is asked about why does he keep doing this and all this shit, and he said that he had a sexual fantasy of just starting to murder these young boys, and he had a ton of different ways of fantasies about how he would do it. So eventually he was had a psychologist give him a psych eval, and was asked about his obsession with molesting children and all that shit. Sorry if I used the wrong wording. I don't know the proper way to say the disgusting things he's doing, but he said that he had it all started as a fantasy. He would just kind of just fantasize about it, and eventually he started acting upon it. And at this point too, he mentioned that he had sexual desires and a fantasy to start murdering these boys as he molested them, and all the different ways he was thinking of how he would kill them all. And right there, they should have just chemically castrated him or just fucking hacked the thing off right there. But no, he was still not incarcerated or forced to actually go to therapy. He was kind of just pretty much boys will be boys in that case. I mean, so now trigger warning, because we're going to get into some of the more graphic things he did if he wasn't already doing disgusting things already. So in September 4th of 1989, in Vancouver, Washington, Dobbs did go out with some fishing material, a knife, and some shoelace, and he started to scout out the area to find young boys to kill. His intention wasn't just to, find a victim to molest and he, during that process, kill them. No, he had the intention to go out to find young boys to actually murder. Unfortunately, he came across the 10 and 11-year-old brothers Unfortunately, he came across 10 and 11-year-old brothers, Cole and William Neer, where he kind of lured them away and forced them to undress. He tied both boys down and performed sexual acts on both of them. And when he was done, he brutally stabbed them both to death. Um, Cole was dead. Cole was pronounced dead on scene, and William died en route to the hospital. So after the murder of the two brothers, Dobbs did start keeping like a scrapbook of all the news articles and anything he could find, like going about the case. He was kind of just like, I don't know, I'm getting the vibe that he was kind of like a narcissist. Now, I'm not a doctor, so forgive me if I'm incorrect, but it was kind of like he was also just getting off on the crimes he had committed by saving all of that information. So on October 29th, Dobbs did drive up to Portland, Oregon, where he came across a 4-year-old Lee and his older 9-year-old brother, Justin. He again tried to lure the boys away. He found the boys playing alone on a slide. Justin decided to go home, but Dobbs somehow convinced 4-year-old Lee to go with him and that he would drive him back home later. Dobbs then ordered the boy to undress and then tied him down to the bed and beginning to molest him and take photographs of the abuse. Dobbs kept Lee overnight while he continued to sexually abuse, all while jotting down every single detail in his diary and photographing it. The next morning, he did strangle Lee to death and left him hanging up in the closet and took photos as like a little trophy of his crime he committed. He also then burned the boys' clothes except the underwear to keep as a souvenir of the crime. Then he did take the young boy's body, put him in a trash bag, and throw him in some bushes. The next day, his body was discovered, which sparked the manhunt to find the killer who was doing these awful, terrible things to these 3 young boys so far. He confessed later to the police that he actually had no intention on killing Lee, but because he didn't want him to tell on him, he decided the only way to keep him quiet was to kill him. Over the next few days, because there was a huge manhunt out looking for who could have done this, Dobbs did keep a low profile, hiding out in his apartment, jotting down new ideas of his next victims, and also trying to come up with a new torture device that he could potentially use on his next victim. I actually had a case, I don't think I ever filmed it. Oh my god, I forgot the name of the killer. Did I do a story on him? I don't think I did. I think I intended to do it, and then I don't think I ever edited the footage and put it together. But there was a case of a serial killer named the Candyman, nicknamed the Candyman. I forget his real name. And he also had like a torture device in his house that he would strap these young guys to and would use it to torture them till he eventually killed them. He also hired 2 other like young boys to help him in the murders. Oh my god, this like twisted in my mind because I remember so much detail about this. Did I edit that video? Did I post that? I think I did. Anyways, we're on this story now. So yeah, he was like coming up with these future plans on creating what he was calling a torture rack, and he was really determined to use it on his next victim. November 13th of 1989, Dobbs attempted to get his 4th victim at the New Liberty Theater. It was about 12 miles out from where he lived. He did approach a 6-year-old boy named James Kurt II in a bathroom. Dobbs tried to convince the boy to go with them. Luckily, the boy wasn't too like easy going about it, so Dobbs tried to pick him up and just walk out of the bathroom theater through the lobby with the boy to take him to his car. The boy was throwing a fit, kicking and screaming. Of course, it caught the attention of people, and Dobbs apparently tried to make it seem like it was just a child like acting up, and he was leaving the theater with his whiny child. Luckily, some of the employees were kind of just keeping an eye on him because it just seemed weird. Because of how much the boy was struggling, I think Dobbs just didn't want to like deal with this much of a commotion, so he did put the boy down and he ran out of the theater to his car. So the boy's mother's boyfriend, William Graves, ran outside saying that the boy was nearly abducted. The employees pointed off in the direction Dobbs had ran off on. Luckily, Dobbs just had the unfortunate luck of, as he was trying to flee the scene, his car broke down not too far from where he was. To not really cause suspicion, Mr. Graves, the boy's mother's boyfriend, approached him pretending just to be a passerby. And while he was helping Dobbs with his car, he actually got him in a headlock and dragged his ass all the way back to the theater to get the full ID from the employees and had the police called. And thus, Westley Allan Dobbs was finally caught. After Dobbs was arrested, they did get a search warrant to go check out his apartment, and during the search of his apartment, they discovered his diary, which had graphic details about all the crimes he had committed and future plans of stuff he had committed. They found his torture rack that he eventually did put together. He was charged for the 3 murders of the boys he killed, and then he was charged for the attempted kidnapping, and he did at first plead not guilty, but then later did change his verdict to guilty. In the trial, this is where it gets like a little like whoa, and I'll go ahead and show you guys like interview footage and stuff of like him speaking, because it is really crazy. Like I said, he never like actually lied about some of his crimes and shit he did, so he was very like open about what he did. He actually during court actually refused to appeal any of his like charges, and stated that the system had failed repeatedly. Obviously they did, as many times as we heard that he was caught molesting and abusing children and still was let go or given very minimal time, and like, you know, pretty much a slap on the wrist, like leading up to him not being arrested and committing the murders he did, which if he were just to have been arrested prior for his other fucking actions, then maybe he wouldn't have been able to like unfortunately kill like he did. I mean, judging by like his character and what he says, like eventually he might have done it either way, but I don't know. Dobbs claimed that, you know, speaking about this was pointless, and that just to give him the death penalty, like execution. And in 1990 he was actually sentenced to death and was given the option of lethal injection or hanging, in which Dobbs chose hanging because of one of the ways he killed his victims, by strangulation. But the reason he appealed like anything in court is because he said that he would not be able to control his urges, and given the chance he would escape, kill, and rape again, and he would like you to know that he would enjoy every minute of it. So the only way to stop him would be to execute him, because he did promise that if he were to ever given the chance, he would escape and do it all over again. So that was the case of Westley Allan Dodd. Sorry if I was a little all over the place. It's been a minute since I recorded one of these, and I've just been trying to get back into the groove of all of it. Anyways, I've tried to end this thing like a million times, but I can't get anything quiet around here. So check out all the links down below to my merch, to all the shit you can follow me on. But until then, this is Terror Krueger, and I'll see you ghouls later. Bye. Yeah.